If you think your city councillor can stop a 40-story tower going up on Merivale Road, I've got bad news for you. But I've also got the part that nobody seems to want to talk about, what a councillor can actually do about it, because it's not nothing, and it's not what the lawn signs and the short videos and the silly slogans say. Start with the why. A few years ago, the province of Ontario decided the housing shortage was an emergency. They set a target of 1.5 million new homes by 2031. You can agree with that goal or not, but for what I'm about to show you, it doesn't really matter. Because once the province calls something an emergency, they start doing something else. They start pulling the tools out of our hands to get it built faster. That's the part that should concern you, not the goal, but the method. Every development in Ontario has to follow one rule book, and it's called the Provincial Planning Statement. The city's official plan has to obey it. The baseline Merivale secondary plan has to obey the official plan, so the rules all run downhill from Queen's Park to City Hall to your street. And here's what the rule book says about the corridors like Merivale. It says intensification shall be prioritized next to transit corridors. It says the redevelopment of underused malls and plazas into housing shall be permitted and facilitated. That one word right there is the problem, shall. Anybody that did any time in the military knows what that word means. That means that's not a suggestion, that's a command. And these numbers are floors, not ceilings. So the density targets are minimum. Council can go higher, but it can't go lower. So when someone promises to just zone the towers away, you have to understand what they're telling you. They're promising you something the rule book already makes illegal. They can't actually do that regardless of it. Okay, so now we think for ourselves, if the densification is already on its way, at least the residents can fight the worst parts of it. We can file an appeal. We can have our day at the tribunal. So not anymore. In 2024, the province passed Bill 185. It stripped the right of third parties. That's you, your neighbors, your community center, all that stuff. It stripped the rights to appeal a development approval to the Ontario Land Tribunal. Now only the developer can appeal, not the neighbors, not the ratepayers. The people who actually live here lost their standing to object. And that hands you an asymmetry that you need to understand. So a yes from the province is now permanent. Once a project is approved, nobody can realistically change it. If council refuses a project that fits the plan, the developer just appeals, the tribunal overturns it, and then the city gets to pay all the legal bills when it loses. So the whole machine now leans one way towards yes. A yes is locked, a no is just an expensive delay on the road to saying yes anyways. So let me be clear and honest with you about what a councillor can do and what a councillor can't do. They can't turn Merivale into a no-growth zone because the province forbids it. They can't stop a project that already fits the zoning. There's no vote required. It just starts happening. They can't override the Ontario Land Tribunal. Anybody that tells you they'll single-handedly stop the towers, they're either lying to you or they just don't understand that the job they're interviewing. But we're not done yet. The province wrote the rule book that mandates the growth, but buried inside the thing is this one line we can use to protect ourselves. It says the land use and infrastructure shall be coordinated and integrated. It says servicing has to be built into the planning at every stage. It says the growth should be phased to line up with the timely provision of the infrastructure. So if you read that again, phased to the infrastructure, that's the button that a councillor can actually push. It's called a holding provision. You attach it to the zoning. It means the tower can't be built until the sewer, the water main, the stormwater system, and the vehicle traffic situation is all planned, built, funded, ready to go. I'm not inventing the constraint. The city's own servicing plans for this corridor already say it. It says Merivale needs a brand new trunk sewer, a new view mount trunk, stormwater upgrades at 3 separate ponds, bigger water mains running right through the neighborhood. None of this is built. Most of it's not even funded. So this is my position, and it's the one thing in the file that is real and actually deliverable. The growth has to follow the infrastructure. It can't overrun it. No tower gets to open before everything else is already in place. Nobody can call that anti-housing, because I'm not saying no homes or no apartments. I'm just saying you have to build all these things in an order that actually makes sense. You want to see what happens when growth goes before infrastructure. We don't need an example of it. We already lived through it. Last Canada Day with the flooding, we already made a whole video about that. And here's the part that matters the most for this conversation. That drainage was sized once decades ago for the neighborhood that existed back then, like we said in that video, and it was never upsized. We just kept adding on top of it. The pipe stayed exactly the same. Now parts of Ward 9 flood out. It's happened twice in a couple of years. Telling everyone the water in their basement is just the price of a dynamic climate, while the pipe under the street is the exact same it's been since 1960, that's not proper stewardship. That's just trying to find excuses. So when I say growth has to follow infrastructure, that's what I mean. So no paperwork Basements, whether yours stays dry after they've dropped 3 more towers upstream of what already exists, that matters. That's the planning stage that has to happen first. So now the province's big answer to the traffic problem on Merivale is bus lanes down Merivale. So let's talk about this one, honestly. The transit that everybody in the city used to be proud of, the network people actually chose to ride on, is now something that the most of us try to plan our day around. So the plan is to pour thousands of new residents onto Merivale and just trust that they'll all leave their car at home and not bring new cars in. And they'll take a system that nobody wants to take and nobody relies upon. So here's what they won't say out loud for some damned reason. A bus lane doesn't remove a single car. It gives buses its own lane on a road that's already gridlocked. Painting a bus lane means fewer lanes for all the cars that are already there. And every apartment tower you stack along that corridor brings more people with more cars in a place that was designed in the 1960s entirely around driving. Here's the thing about Merivale. If you actually drive on it, Merivale runs into Clyde, Clyde runs into Maitland, and that's your way down to the 417. Different names, same road, every local knows it. And it's a designated truck route, and it's one of the only continuous north-south routes in all of Nepean. So the Colonnade Industrial Park and the entire industrial commercial section down in the south end of Merivale, that's the only way that those guys get all the way up to the 417 straight down Merivale. That traffic's not going anywhere. That's not a plan. That's just making the traffic jams worse and blaming the traffic for it. That's like Disney wrecking Star Wars and blaming all of us for not liking it. So am I against the densification? Yes, but that's not a councillor's call, unfortunately. The only thing I can do is make sure that the plan makes sense and that the growth comes after the infrastructure so we don't end up with more flooded basements and more traffic jams on Merivale. So here's what would actually work, because Merivale's problem isn't new. It's been like this for decades. Merivale's what they call a strode. Everybody knows exactly what I mean when I say that word. It's half street, it's half road, and it's not good at being either. And it was a terrible idea back in the day when someone thought this thing up. It's too fast and too wide to be a place you want to hang around on foot. And it's too clogged and too tangled with driveways accessing the parking lots and Best Buy and Toys R Us to actually move traffic at a reasonable pace. It's been failing in both jobs for decades, and anybody who drives on it knows it in their bones. And it's not just Merivale. Look at how the roads move out here. They bend and they jog and they change names 3 or 4 times. Woodruff does this weird double 90-degree jog around Carling, and I think that's because somebody refused to sell their farm back in the 1800s. Merivale's just the biggest thing we never got right. So for once, can we please fix it? We are genuinely serious about intensifying this corridor. Really serious, not just slapping towers in the empty parking lots. Then you got to finally build it in a way that should have been built in the entire time. So you have to make it 2 things at once properly. A road down the middle that carries through traffic, and then access streets on the side. That's where the front doors and the shops, the parking, and yes, the bus lanes could live. So that's even got a name. It's called a multi-way boulevard, and cities around the world have been building these things for a century, but in Ottawa, apparently we can't figure this out. So let's be honest about why it's hard and probably why Ottawa's never managed to figure it out. Doing something like this isn't easy. I legitimately don't think there's enough land available on Merivale right now to do it. So you'd be getting into expropriating some of the empty, dead parking lots before you could do something like this, but it's not impossible. Okay, that's difficult, that's expensive. But if it's a real fight, but if it's done properly, it'll be done finally and forever, and we'll have our great grandkids telling us, hey, Merivale's great, everything flows down there, it all makes sense, as opposed to the conversation, the frustration we've all had with Merivale for 50 years right now, up until right now. But it's an actual solution and a real one, and it's decades late, but here's the thing. So the city's own study for this corridor already admits it would have to confirm property requirements. The secondary plan already gestures at new internal streets and fewer driveways. They're inching towards the right idea, and they just won't commit to it and do it properly, and because really it needs a political push to get it over the final leg. That's the whole difference. Do it right, or stop pretending the towers are just going to work magically. One more thing the councillor can actually push for. There's a strip of open land running right through the middle of Old Nepean, behind Crestview and Medhurst Park. I think everybody knows what I'm talking about. The plan can't decide whether it should be a park or it should be more housing. It still floats from housing on one page and then green space on the next. So clearly there's been no hard decision, but they're thinking about it. So the same provincial rule book that mandates the growth also says to plan for parks, trails, open space, and connected green networks. I'll fight to make that strip a proper green space, better than the overgrown weed farm it is right now, which is why the city keeps eyeing it for more more townhouses. The thing about green space is once you pave it, it's never coming back. So here's my promise. I can't stop the growth. Nobody at City Hall can. The province took that off the table before this even started. But I can make sure it's built in the right order. Infrastructure first, servicing before shovels so your basement stays dry, the roads get rebuilt properly before we pile more onto them, and the green gets protected before it's gone. And I can fight to give you back the voice they legislated away, because a system that tells the people who actually live somewhere they don't get to even be heard isn't good governance, it's just fast governance. And fast and right are not the same thing. Good, fast, cheap, pick two.